Our first presentation this morning is Nicky Agate. Nicky is the project manager for digital initiatives at MLA, the Modern Language Association, where she manages MLA Commons, the MLA Repository Commons Open Repository Exchange, or CORE, and the nascent interdisciplinary network Humanities Commons. She holds a PhD in French literature from NYU and an MFA in literary translation from the University of Iowa. I had the pleasure of meeting Nicky when we worked together at ProQuest, and these days with her colleagues at the MLA's Office of Scholarly Communication, she facilitates and champions new and open forms of communication and collaboration in the humanities. Nicky, whenever you're ready, the virtual floor is yours. Actually, no, it's not. I'll make you moderator, and then you'll be able to do that. Sorry. Okay, there you go.
Okay, I see that I'm moderator. And let me just check that I can do this. Yeah, okay. Hi, thank you so much, Jeremy, and everyone there for inviting me to talk today about some of the digital initiatives that we are working on at the Modern Language Association. I don't know how many of you are familiar with MLA Commons. It is a place where members of the MLA can create a professional profile, follow each other's work, seek feedback on their own work, establish and join special interest forums, create or contribute to a WordPress blog or site, and then openly peer review born digital texts. Two of the ones we have up there currently are literary studies in the digital age and digital pedagogy in the humanities. So it's really a place for people to practice public digital humanities and increase the audience for their scholarship and their teaching materials by making them openly available in the MLA repository, which is called CORE. One of the things I want to talk to you about today is a project called Humanities Commons that we're currently working on, thanks to a Mellon grant. And that project was born in essence of two things. The first that was the other smaller societies saw our commons and began asking the MLA for help setting up and managing their own social and scholarly communication networks. So even though MLA Commons is built on CBox or Commons in a Box, which is open source software from CUNY, it requires a certain amount of upkeep and development work, and smaller societies often don't have the staff to do that work. The second thing that propelled us to propose Humanities Commons is that our members were telling us that they wanted to connect and work with scholars in other fields too. So extending the reach of the Commons is an attempt to support the increasing number of MLA members whose work is interdisciplinary or has the untapped potential to be interdisciplinary, while at the same time supporting scholarly societies who both want their own intimate networks and want to be part of something larger and interdisciplinary. Okay, so our pilot for Humanities Commons. In its most basic form, this is the creation of common sites based on CBOTs for 3 partner societies. The College Art Association, the Association for Jewish Studies, and the Association for Slavic, East European, and Eurasian Studies, and then interconnecting all of those sites with one another. It sounds pretty easy, but we definitely needed that Mellon grant, and I'll show you why in a moment. So each participating organization here will have some spaces that are private to their own users or to a particular subset of their users, such as a private working group. Some of these private spaces will cut across multiple organizations in a central Humanities Commons hub as members develop interdisciplinary workspaces. And members can choose whether they want these groups to be entirely private or read-only to the general public or to open them up. There's also the fact that scholarly societies share common goals of advocating for the humanities and building public support for members' work. So we've already discussed, for example, a cross-disciplinary advocacy group for improving contingent labor conditions, or another for careers outside the academy, or for people who perhaps want to work on having digital work accepted in the tenure and promotion process. Also to be located in the central Humanities Commons space is CORE, which is our NEH-funded repository, which is soon to come out of beta and become interdisciplinary. So we collaborated with Columbia University's Center for Digital Scholarship to build and launch CORE in late May 2015. It is an openly available CBOX plugin. You can get the code on GitHub, created to facilitate open access distribution of the many products of humanities work. And because so many humanities scholars now are doing scholarly work that exceeds established forms of scholarly communication, in that they're posting to blogs and cleaning data sets for text mining and data visualization, or coding, or creating digital learning objects for the classroom, we wanted to legitimate these as forms of scholarly communication that deserve to be valued as professional contributions and made openly available, to be made public in the original sense of the word publish. So as you can see on the slide here, CORE accepts a huge range of items and their corresponding file types. I will say that so far our members have stuck to PDFs and PowerPoints with the occasional video or HTML file, but we're hoping that as we expand into Humanities Commons, uploads in these other formats will increase. Anyone with an internet connection can browse, search, and download full-text materials from CORE, but currently only MLA members can upload materials to it, and then they get a DOI for each deposit. For those of you that don't know, one of the platform's unique features is its connection to the MLA's subdisciplinary forums in the Commons. So a member can choose to associate something they deposit in the repository with up to 5 of these forums, which triggers its inclusion in the forums collection and on the forums page, homepage, and the sending of email notifications to the members of those forums. The results speak for themselves. Items shared with at least one forum upon deposit had, on average, a download rate that was 450% higher than those shared with none. And of course, with Humanities Commons, our members of our partner societies will also be able to upload materials to the shared repository, sharing with up to 5 of their societies groups, or if we have someone who's a member of both CAA and AGS, they get the choice of their groups, as well as with any groups that are created on the Humanities Commons hub itself. Oh, that's the headache slide. There. So almost a year into its launch, CORE is home to, I think, 313 items. So it's a deposit rate of just under 1 a day, which isn't bad for something that's in beta. What's more, people are really reading this work. The most popular item in CORE has been downloaded over 900 times. And the top 5 items have all been downloaded at least 200 times. The top 20 at least 100 times. What's been really interesting to us is the breadth of content and contributors in the top 20. So I think what we were expecting to see would be the most downloaded items being peer-reviewed articles that were in journals that were hard to get to unless you had, very special subscription in your library. And what we've actually seen is that people want to read these other products of humanities research too. So we have 6 peer-reviewed articles, 5 conference papers, book chapters, syllabi. We're really seeing a lot of interest in particularly digital humanities syllabi and course materials. And then an op-ed that was just a response to something interesting. And a thesis. Those are all in the top 20. I think we have like 6 or 7 theses in there. And in fact, I put my dissertation in there and it's already been downloaded. And it's downloaded 65 times, which to me, I never believed I would have that many readers of a dissertation because I still don't think my entire committee read it. So I was on about 3 readers, I think. And then you see the people who contributed here. So we've got full professors, we've got alt-act members, associate professors, graduate students, assistants, adjuncts, and no partridges really. I will say that we were expecting tenure and perhaps the reticence of some people to share openly to cause most people to be full professors before they contributed, but we've seen a really good mix of people getting things out there. And again, this is just the top 20 by downloads. So our biggest headache so far has been identity management. Developing and implementing a federated authentication and identity management framework to connect these sites with each other, with our existing commons, and with the Humanities Commons Hub. So we've been working in close partnership with a group called Spherical Cow to try and get this right. First of all, each participating organization relies on a different member management system. Then there's the fact that an individual user may be a member of multiple organizations at any given time, and that those memberships may lapse or renew at irregular intervals, and that he or she may have a different role in each organization with a different level of permission to access certain resources, and then the expiration time of this role might or might not coincide with the expiration of membership. So this is the kind of thing that's beginning to hurt our heads. I mean, the user won't see anything that you see here. They'll be presented with the option to log in with Google and Twitter, or to create a Humanities Commons user ID. We're working with interoperability with university logins too, so that an NYU student, say, who's also an AJS member, would have a seamless single sign-on experience across the university library, the LMS, and the Commons and Core. Then their information would be checked against the relevant database, and their access permissions and basic information loaded into their profile. The other thing that we're trying to work on before we launch this in November or December is a login with ORCID. And this is my last slide here. It's just some of the challenges that we have ahead of us. The ones on the right are challenges for core and things we're actively working on. One that I don't have here is interoperability with library repositories, with institutional repositories, and this is something we're really, really passionate about. We believe that if a member of any of the Humanities Commons organizations is also a faculty or student member somewhere, that they'll be able to deposit once and have their work appear in two places. We also want to get much more in-depth metrics for some of the materials that are deposited in core. Right now, we're just limited to views and downloads. We want to work on multimodal projects, so the ability to upload the data set and the essay and the presentation that all go together and have one DOI for them if that's what you want. Versioning, signifying relationships between items, user editing, and then metadata review. And this is something, I mean, right now I've been taking classes and doing a lot of metadata research, but we do not have a librarian on staff, and so we're reliant on my trying to get up to speed as quickly as possible so that whenever we forge ahead with becoming interoperable with university repositories, the librarians aren't really angry with us because we have horrible metadata. For Humanities Commons itself, one of the biggest problems is going to be creating a seamless user experience so that someone who's an AJS member knows when they're on the more intimate AJS Commons and when they're on the Humanities Commons. Tied into that is the need to respect society autonomy, especially for these smaller organizations who really want a space where their members can feel comfortable talking to one another, and at the same time promoting interdisciplinarity. We want to bring in other societies and other instances of CBOX so that we can grow and allow Humanities Commons to become as interdisciplinary as possible. but one of the big problems there is going to be sustainability, and this is something we really need to think about. Currently, our agreement with Columbia has every single file being backed up something like 28 times. It's digital preservation at some of its finest at the moment, and that's why we call CORE often a library quality repository. But we need to think about moving forward as we grow, as Humanities Commons grows, how we're going to keep things sustainable. And connected to that is just the desire to open up access and perhaps even move beyond the society model. But again, that's going to be very dependent on sustainability. And that is about it for me. So I would love to hear questions, or you can chat questions. And otherwise, I'm going to pass it back to Jeremy.
Great, thank you, Nikki. So if anyone does have questions, please feel free to chat them. And if you'd like to grab the mic and verbally ask, feel free. We do have one question, Nikki. What are some of the metadata problems? Does it relate to authority control?
I'm not quite sure I understand what you mean by authority control.
What I mean by that is form of names, for example. So if somebody has published using an initial for their first name, and then in other instances has used the full name.
That's not so much a problem, partly because for articles that have already been published, we worked with Martin Eve from the Open Library of the Humanities to create a DOI lookup. And so we can actually pre-populate the data there for anything that's been pre-published. But certainly that authority control is one of the reasons why we want to have this really tightly integrated with ORCID somewhere down the line.
Great, it looks like at least one person is typing, so we'll give Christina one moment. Could you talk a little bit about the challenges of versioning of multimodal data sets?
Okay, so if someone uploads a data set and then later on the data set is changed or updated, we want to make sure that the original is still available, right? So that we can't be overwriting in the archive. In a way, we want to make sure that people are able to see a progression. And so we have to work out ways to make that clear that there's a link between two items, but that they're not necessarily the same item, especially when it comes to citing something, that people know the DOI for the appropriate item. You're welcome.
Any other questions for Nikki? All right, doesn't look like there are any questions at this point, so that will wrap up the first presentation, and thank you, Nikki, for that. And if anyone has any questions that you come up with after Nikki's finished, which is now, if you have any more questions for Nikki, please feel free to chat, tweet, and we'll come back to them. And if you can't stay for the whole day today, I'll email you those questions and we'll facilitate getting them
that's
answered.
fine. Or if people just mention me on Twitter, I can get back. So my handle's up there.
Yes, there you go. Great. All right, thank you again, Nikki.
Thank you, Jeremy.